Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are jumping straight into, well, probably the most intense situation unfolding in Port Charles right now. We're talking about the investigation into who shot Drew Kane Quartermain. We've got a whole stack of analysis here. We're looking at the evidence, the motives, and maybe most critically, the kind of desperate strategy Carly Spencer seems to be putting together.
Yeah, it's fascinating because the real drama isn't just, finding the shooter. It's about Carly. She's described as very worried that her son, Michael Corinthos, is not just a suspect, but the prime suspect. And this investigation, it's apparently gathering big momentum. The stakes feel incredibly high, especially when you remember Michael's history.
Right. So our mission today really is to unpack this, to get into the sheer desperation that's pushing Carly towards something pretty unthinkable. Taking the fall, potentially, for a crime. Well, we don't even know if she committed it or if Michael did or someone else entirely. But she's considering taking the blame just to protect Michael. We need to understand the trauma behind this, the legal chess game she's trying to play.
Involving lawyers, maybe even global contacts.
And whether this whole plan can actually hold up against the victim himself, Drew, who seems to have his own agenda.
It really feels like a situation where this deep, deep fear is just overriding everything else for Carly. She seems ready to sacrifice absolutely everything because for her, Michael going back to Pentonville, it's not just jail time. Given his past trauma there, she sees it as like the destruction of his soul. It's a guaranteed catastrophe in her mind.
So it's a high-wire act, legally and emotionally.
Definitely. We need to look at every single piece of this strategy she's apparently trying to pull off.
Okay, so let's start where the PCPD started, Michael Corinthos. Our analysis confirms, for Anna Devane and the police, Michael isn't just, maybe involved. He looks like the prime suspect. And it starts with motive, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The motive is, well, it's practically dripping off him. Carly apparently knows for sure. Michael has a clear reason, a very understandable reason, to want to lash out at Drew. And it's deeply personal, isn't it? Drew slept with Willow Tate, Michael's partner.
Right. That's not just some business deal gone wrong. That's a massive betrayal hitting right at the core of his life, his family.
Exactly. It provides an immediate, intense, and frankly pretty plausible reason for some kind of violent reaction. The police have to look at that first.
But what's really interesting here, based on the notes, is that Carly's fear isn't just a mother defending her son blindly. She actually seems to suspect him herself. Like may have really shot Drew.
Yeah, that's a huge twist. It's not just external pressure, it's internal doubt. She's apparently basing this on his behavior. He's not telling her everything. He's acting suspicious, maybe evasive.
The sources even mentioned his initial alibi might have been shaky.
He's basically acting like someone who's guilty and cracking under the pressure, which, ironically, probably just fuels Carly's determination to step in and manage the situation, even if it means taking the blame.
So his suspicious behavior is a major problem for him.
A huge liability. But then you get the classic Port Charles family dynamics kicking in. It gets messy because Michael might have this very unlikely potential ally, Tracy Quartermain.
Tracy? Really, given their history?
Well, our sources say Tracy also suspects Michael might have done it, but, and this is the kicker, she's apparently willing to cover for him. Why? Because, quote, she cannot stand Drew.
Wow. So personal dislike for the victim overrides finding out the truth about a shooting.
Seems like it. It's that twisted Quartermain loyalty, or maybe just animosity. Her hatred for Drew is so strong, she'd rather protect the likely shooter, even if it's Michael, than see Drew get any kind of justice, or maybe see the family name dragged through more mud.
That really complicates things. Tracy potentially running interference.
It does. It creates this internal conflict where she might be actively hindering the investigation to spite Drew.
But even with family trying to cover things up, the actual police work, led by Anna Devane, seems pretty solid. They hit a small snag initially, right, with the first search?
Yeah, that's right. The first search was at the Quartermain mansion, the Q's. Makes sense. Michael lives there. But they came up empty. No murder weapon found at that point.
So what changed? How did the momentum pick back up so quickly?
It came down to a key alibi falling apart. Spectacularly, actually. Willow's alibi. The one that might have given Michael some cover.
Oh, Willow. And this involves Nina Reeves, doesn't it? There's some delicious irony here.
Oh, absolutely. So Willow claims she was out somewhere, which could have potentially placed Michael away from the scene too, or at least muddied the timeline. But then Nina...
Oh, Nina. Acting, completely in her own self-interest, probably trying to smooth something over with Willow.
Right, but she had her own actual proof of where she was. Exactly. She was caught on security footage. Where? At Willow's apartment. When? At the exact time Willow claimed they were out together somewhere else.
So Nina, just by being Nina and trying to manage her own situation, completely blows up Willow's story.
Precisely. Willow apparently thought Nina was maybe trying to manufacture an alibi for herself, but Nina was just being Nina. And in doing so, she accidentally exposed Willow's lie. It's kind of funny, in a dark way. The source notes really lament this. If Nina had just kept her mouth shut, none of this would be happening.
One little timestamp on a security feed unravels everything.
It's a perfect example of the butterfly effect in Port Charles. That one documented inconsistency. It changes the entire game for the police.
Okay, so walk us through the procedural step here. Willow's alibi collapses. How does that lead Anna Devane to get a search warrant for Elizabeth Weber's house specifically?
Well, because that's where Willow was staying at the time. Once Willow's credibility is shot, Anna thinks, okay, if the alibi is fake, where else could evidence like the gun be hidden? The most logical place is where Willow is currently residing, or at least has access to. So, Elizabeth Weber's house. Anna gets a new warrant specifically for that location. It's smart police work following the evidence trail.
And this is where the investigation makes a major breakthrough.
Bingo. The murder weapon is found at Elizabeth Weber's house. Case closed. Not quite.
Because Michael's behavior right around the time of the search makes things even more complicated.
Oh, incredibly complicated. His timing is just terrible. Or maybe deliberately terrible. He shows up at Liz's house, seemingly out of the blue. And crucially, this happens after he left the Quartermain mansion, apparently right when the police were off getting a corrected warrant for Liz's place.
So it looks like he might have known they couldn't legally search Liz's house yet and use that window.
That's certainly how it looks. The source description is that he was kind of evading the search. He knew they were searching the cues. He leaves, pops up at Liz's. It screams avoidance.
And then what was he doing there? The reason he gave Willow seems flimsy.
Extremely flimsy. He shows up, Willow finds him there alone, and he starts offering her something very unlikely, visitation for the kids. Like out of nowhere, in the middle of this high-stress situation where he might be the prime suspect in a shooting, he decides now is the time to make a generous custody offer.
It feels like a deflection, a way to explain why he was there if caught.
Exactly. It could be seen as maybe trying to buy goodwill, create a distraction, or plant a seed of doubt. Why would a guy about to be arrested for shooting my ex be offering me more time with the kids? It muddies the waters. It suggests he might have known the gun was there, or at least that the police were zeroing in on that location, and he needed a plausible, if weak, excuse for his presence. Calculated, nervous energy.
And the fallout from this, Liz Weber gets pulled in for questioning.
Yep. And she's potentially going to tell Anna that both Carly and Michael were at her house unexpectedly, maybe even around the same time frame.
Okay, so let's connect those dots for the PCPD. You've got Michael, the prime suspect, with a clear motive. You've got Carly, who previously threatened Drew. Both show up unannounced, acting weird, at the exact location where the murder weapon is eventually found.
For Anna Devane, that's no longer just suspicion. That's a pattern. The red flags aren't just flags anymore. They're giant neon signs pointing straight at Michael. And because she was there too, pulling Carly deeper into the frame, this is probably the moment Carly realizes it's not just bad, it's critical. The walls aren't just closing in, they're practically touching.
Okay, so we've established the legal situation's getting dire for Michael. The evidence, his actions, it all looks bad. Now we need to really dig into why Carly is willing to consider such an extreme measure as taking the fall. This isn't just, standard maternal protectiveness. This feels different.
It's absolutely different, and it's rooted in deep, specific trauma. To understand why she'd even contemplate confessing to a crime, potentially when she didn't commit, you have to grasp what prison means for Michael in her mind. It's not just about losing freedom. It's about preventing the recurrence of something truly horrific.
And we have confirmation of this level of commitment, right, from the actress herself.
Yeah, Laura Wright, who plays Carly, apparently gave an interview, Soap Digest, the notes suggest, where she was very clear about Carly's mindset. She said Carly is absolutely intent on protecting Michael because she's terrified he'll go down for trying to kill Drew.
And she spelled out the end game.
Explicitly, Wright confirmed, and this is a direct quote apparently, even if her character has to take the blame herself, she will do it to save Michael. That's an incredible statement of intent. It means everything else, her own life, her freedom, her relationships. Sunny, it all takes a back seat to saving Michael from prison.
She's willing to throw away years of her own life.
Years. Because of what happened before. And her current anxiety level, it's already through the roof. The sources mention that as worried as she is now, Her terror would be amplified like 5 times if she knew the full extent of the evidence. Specifically, if she knew that Tracy Quartermain actually saw Michael outside Drew's place on the night of the shooting.
Ah, that eyewitness piece would be devastating for her.
Absolutely. It would basically confirm her deepest fears about his potential guilt and likely trigger her into taking immediate drastic action. It would remove any lingering hope he was innocent.
So let's talk about the source of this profound fear. It all goes back to Pentonville, years ago. Michael did time for killing his stepmother, Claudia Zaccara.
Right, and it's really important to add the context there. He wasn't acting maliciously. He killed Claudia while protecting Carly. He essentially stepped in to save his mother. The source material even adds a little aside, that Claudia really had it coming, suggesting she was a genuine threat.
So the act itself was arguably justified, defensive even, but the experience of being in Pentonville, that's what scarred him.
Exactly. While the conviction might have been for homicide, the real damage happened inside. We know, it's part of his established history, that Michael was profoundly traumatized during his time there. Specifically, and this is crucial to understanding Carly's fear, he was raped while incarcerated.
That is the absolute core of it, isn't it? That specific violation and trauma.
It is. It explains everything about Carly's current desperation. When she thinks about Michael going back to Pentonville, she's not picturing some low-security facility or a manageable sentence. She's flashing back to the horror he endured. She saw the aftermath, the emotional damage, the vulnerability. The thought of him being exposed to that kind of potential brutality and psychological destruction again, it's simply unbearable for her.
It elevates this from a legal problem to an existential crisis for her son.
Precisely. That's why she'll consider any option, even confessing herself, to prevent it. It's not about justice, it's about survival, his psychological survival.
And complicating her feelings, making her perhaps even more determined to act, is a sense of guilt. Like she might have accidentally made things worse for Michael already.
Yeah, there seems to be an element of self-blame creeping in, which is pretty common for parents in high-stress situations like this. The sources indicate she's already worried she might have messed up. Apparently, after talking to Anna Devane earlier, Carly confided in Jack Brennan. She told him she felt she said the wrong thing.
What did she think she did wrong?
She worried that her conversation with Anna, which maybe she intended to use to gather intel or deflect suspicion, actually backfired. That she might have inadvertently put Michael more so on the PCPD's radar, made him look guiltier, perhaps by being overly defensive or asking the wrong questions.
So she feels partly responsible for the spotlight intensifying on him.
It seems so. Which means her plan to potentially confess isn't just about shielding him from future harm, it's also potentially driven by a need to atone for her perceived mistake. She feels she helped push him closer to the edge, so now she has to be the one to pull him back, even if it means taking his place. She becomes the sole target, diverting all attention away from him. Okay, so if Carly decides to go through with this, to take the fall, it's not just going to be an emotional breakdown and a sudden confession at the PCPD. This is Carly Corinthos we're talking about. There's a strategy involved. It's calculated.
Right, it's based on her assessment of the risks, the potential outcomes, and the resources she can mobilize.
Exactly. The basic calculation seems to be, if Anna starts seriously suspecting the gun was planted at Liz's house, then both she and Michael are prime targets. She knows she needs to act decisively to control the narrative. If she feels those walls closing in, the plan is to actively make herself look guilty.
How does she do that? Just confess.
Confess, yes, but also lean into the existing suspicion. Remember, she's already a suspect. She had previously threatened to kill Drew. That threat is on record. So as she confesses now, it conveniently fits the narrative the police might already be considering. It confirms their initial bias.
She's essentially building a case against herself, framing it as a sudden emotional act.
Precisely. A crime of passion. That seems to be the key angle she's aiming for legally. Spontaneous, understandable rage, not cold-blooded intent.
And this whole idea of sacrificing herself, there's a precedent here, isn't there, involving Drew himself. It adds a layer of almost twisted justification for her.
Oh, absolutely. The Drew precedent, as we might call it, or the tit for tat. You have to remember the backstory. Drew previously sacrificed himself for Carly.
This was during the SEC investigation, right? Insider trading involving Nina.
That's the one. The Securities and Exchange Commission was investigating some serious financial dealings. Carly was involved, potentially facing charges. But Drew stepped in, he took the fall, went to prison in her place.
So now Carly's using that past event as her own moral justification.
Kind of. It seems she's rationalizing her current plan by thinking along these lines. If Drew, and she apparently thinks of him dismissively, the notes say like a dirtbag that he is, if he could make that sacrifice for her, then how could she not do the same for her own son? Not doing it would make her a terrible mom in her own eyes. It turns a eventually illegal act, like obstruction of justice or false confession, into a moral duty
It's a
almost.
very Carly way of thinking. But critically, she seems optimistic about her own outcome if she confesses. She doesn't think she'll be locked away for decades, does she?
No, not at all. She apparently thinks she won't serve too much time behind bars. She's banking on a relatively short sentence.
Why? What's the basis for that optimism? It seems risky.
It comes down to that legal framing we talked about, the crime of passion. She believes her lawyer, the very capable Diane Miller, can successfully argue this. If they can convince a judge or jury, or maybe even just the DA for a plea deal, that this wasn't premeditated murder, but a spontaneous act driven by emotion, well, that often leads to lesser charges. Manslaughter instead of attempted murder, for example, or a plea to something even lower.
Which carries a significantly shorter sentence than what Michael might face.
Exactly. That's the contrast she's focused on. Michael, if convicted, is looking at potential hard time. Why? Because he has that prior homicide conviction on his record. Even though it was years ago, even though he was protecting her legally, it makes him look like a repeat offender.
So he'd likely get a much harsher sentence, maybe maximum security, less chance of parole.
That's the fear. Whereas Carly, while her history is, let's say, complicated, she doesn't have that specific prior violent felony conviction hanging over her. So she sees herself as the lower risk option for the family. Take a hit, serve a shorter sentence, and Michael avoids Pentonville altogether.
And she's putting a lot of faith in her resources to make this happen. Diane Miller, obviously.
Huge faith in Diane Miller. You know, the sources call her Diane Killer Miller for a reason. She's known for being incredibly sharp, strategic, and fiercely loyal to her clients, especially the Cointhos family.
What makes Diane the right lawyer for this specific, potentially fabricated scenario?
Because Diane is a master craftsman of legal narratives. She knows how to work within the messy reality of the Corinthos world. She understands plea bargains, managing public perception, controlling information flow. If Carly confesses, Diane's job won't just be defense. It'll be damage control and strategic positioning. She'd work to shape the confession, frame the motive, negotiate with the DA, all to achieve that crime of passion angle and secure the quickest, lightest sentence possible. She's perfect for orchestrating this kind of legal theater.
Okay, so Diane handles the courtroom strategy, but Carly seems to think she has another ace up her sleeve, involving Jack Brennan.
Yeah, this is where it gets into potentially murkier territory. She apparently believes she can leverage Jack Brennan to pull some WSB strings for her. The notes even say she loves to have Brennan do her favors.
WSB. That's the World Security Bureau, right? The International Spy Agency. How does a global intelligence agency get involved in a local Port Charles shooting case?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Brennan's connections aren't just local political pull, they're potentially global intelligence networks. The influence could be indirect, maybe ensuring certain evidence gets processed or lost quickly. Maybe applying pressure on other agencies, perhaps ensuring key witnesses who might contradict Carly's passion story become unavailable.
Wow, so she's thinking beyond just the legal system. She's thinking about manipulating the bureaucracy around it.
Potentially. She might be hoping Brennan can use his shadowy connections to grease the wheels, ensure the case moves fast, gets resolved with a plea deal before too many awkward questions get asked, or before a full trial can expose the holes in her story. She wants Brennan to help guarantee that quick in-and-out sentence she's envisioning.
It's a complex, multi-layered plan. Legal strategy, personal justification, and leveraging potentially illicit influence.
Very complex, and she seems to have thought about the practicalities, too, the family logistics, while she's potentially inside.
Right, she thinks the family can manage.
Yeah, she apparently believes Donna, her youngest, will be okay with Sonny. She thinks Donna is old enough to understand, on some level. And Jocelyn and Michael, they're adults now, they can take care of themselves. In her mind, the math works. A short, manageable prison term for her is a price worth paying to guarantee Michael stays out of Pentonville.
Okay, we've spent a lot of time unpacking Carly's mindset. Her motivations driven by love, fear, trauma, and strategy. But now we need to pivot and look at the victim in all this, Drew Kane Quartermain. Because his reaction, his current agenda is described as, frankly, bizarre.
Bizarre is a good word for it. It's incredibly strange. According to the analysis, Drew actually wants Michael to take the fall for shooting him. He's not focused on healing or even necessarily on finding out who really tried to kill him. His focus is entirely on making sure Michael pays.
That seems counterintuitive. Doesn't he care about his own safety? The actual shooter could still be out there.
Logically, yes. That's what's noted as really bizarre. Drew doesn't seem to be concerned about finding the real shooter. There's even the explicit concern raised that they come back to finish Drew off, but he's apparently ignoring that danger.
Why? What's driving him to be so fixated on Michael, even potentially at his own risk?
It seems to come down to one thing: Willow and the kids. He's laser-focused on getting Michael out of the picture, specifically believes Michael being jailed is the key to Willow getting full custody of their children, Wiley and Amelia, and then presumably Willow and the kids moving back in with him. He wants to reconstruct his ideal family unit.
So, jailing Michael isn't just about revenge for the shooting. It's a means to an end regarding custody and his relationship with Willow.
Exactly. And now that he's a congressman, well, you'd think he'd be more careful about appearing vengeful or manipulative, right? Risking his political image.
Yeah, wouldn't this look bad if it came out?
Maybe, but from his perspective, perhaps securing that stable family unit is part of maintaining his image. A congressman needs a solid home life narrative. He sees Michael as the obstacle to that narrative, both personally and legally. So removing Michael, even through potentially questionable focus, serves that larger goal in his mind.
This sets up a really disturbing win-win for Drew, doesn't it? If Michael goes down, Drew gets what he wants. But what if Carly succeeds in taking the fall instead?
Even that works for Drew, just in a different, darker way. The sources point out that Drew actively dislikes Carly. Hates her, maybe. So seeing Carly go to prison, that would be satisfying on a personal level, and crucially, it would devastate Michael. So indirect revenge on Michael, too.
And does Carly going to prison help his custody goals at all?
Drew seems to believe it could. Even if Carly is the one convicted, or if Michael just remains under a cloud of suspicion, it might still strengthen Willow's case for custody. It removes Carly, another potentially destabilizing Corinthos influence, from the children's immediate sphere. It positions Drew and Willow as the more stable parental unit by default.
This is where Carly's optimistic plan for a short sentence could hit a serious snag. Drew isn't just some guy off the street anymore. He's a congressman.
Precisely. He holds actual political power now, real influence. This is the direct counterforce to Carly relying on Diane's legal skills and Brennan's shadowy favors.
So how could Drew use his position against Carly if she confesses?
The analysis is pretty clear on this. If Carly takes the fall, Drew could very well use his influence as a congressman to lean on the justice system. He could push for a longer prison sentence, make sure she serves the full sentence. Think about it. He can call the DA's office, maybe even get federal attention on the case, lobby against parole boards, talk to judges indirectly. He has avenues to ensure the system comes down harder on her than it might otherwise.
So Carly's banking on a quick crime of passion plea deal, possibly helped by Brennan.
While Drew is perfectly positioned to use his legitimate political power to argue for the opposite, maximum punishment, painting her as a dangerous criminal who deserves serious time.
That makes her reliance on a short sentence seem, well, maybe dangerously naive, overly optimistic.
It definitely introduces a huge variable she might be underestimating. Drew's motivation is strong revenge. Custody and his means are significant. He has every reason to make sure her sacrifice is as painful and prolonged as possible. Her belief in a quick resolution might shatter against the reality of his political vengeance.
Yet despite this massive potential complication, Carly's determination seems unwavering.
Absolutely. The sources emphasize this. Michael would hate it if Carly did this. He wouldn't want her to sacrifice herself for him. But Carly, she wouldn't care. Her focus is singular.
It's that maternal drive again.
Completely. She is determined to do absolutely anything for her kids. And the bottom line is she is simply not going to let Michael spend a minute in prison if she can help it. Especially not back in Pentonville, the site of his deepest trauma. That's the non-negotiable point for her.
So Carly Spencer is gearing up for this ultimate sacrifice. It's rooted in history, it's based on a complex strategy involving lawyers and spies, but the massive question mark is whether her plan, her resources, can actually withstand the political blowback from a vengeful congressman who happens to be the victim. Hashtag outro announcer.
So when we pull back and look at this whole situation, this deep dive really shows Carly Spencer's plan isn't just desperate, it's a calculated gamble. It's completely fueled by Michael's past trauma in Pentonville. That's the engine driving everything. We've laid out the key pieces. Her strategy to frame this as a crime of passion, her reliance on Diane Miller's legal maneuvering, and potentially Jack Brennan's back channels.
Right, and then the huge counterweight, Drew. His bizarre focus on revenge, using his new political power not just to get Michael, but potentially to make Carly pay dearly if she takes the fall, all tied up in his desire for custody of the kids.
It's a tangled web, definitely.
Carly is clearly willing to risk absolutely everything. She's banking on this idea of a relatively light sentence to save Michael from what she sees as certain psychological destruction. But here's the final thought we want to leave you with, something to really mull over. Given Drew's status, now he's a sitting congressman, and his very clear, very personal agenda to manipulate the system for revenge and custody, is Carly's whole strategy, her belief in getting a quick crime of passion sentence, fundamentally flawed? Is it dangerously naive?
Yeah, I mean, she's planning for a short-term crisis fix, right? Get in, get out, protect Michael. But Drew has the power and seemingly the will to turn that short-term fix into a long-term political punishment for her. Does Carly's faith in her own resources, her own ability to manage the outcome, ignore this new reality that Drew might actually be the most powerful and most vindictive enemy she's ever faced in this kind of situation? Could her ultimate sacrifice end up being far more permanent than she ever imagined?